Okay, so it all starts with a bunch of monsters roaming around, right? You've got those giant creepy dogs, the huge birds, whatever that thing is, and just basically loads of oversized, angry animals. And then eventually, through evolution, just like how real-life humans came from fish and monkeys or whatever, humans in Elden Ring evolved from these monsters. Okay, cool, so we've now got civilization. Then, out of nowhere, an outer god called the Greater Will sends down a beast riding on a golden star to the lands between. This is, of course, the Elden Beast and is set to become the Elden Ring at some point later on. During all of this, the literal grace of the Greater Will also creates the Erd Tree. And for context, an outer god is basically an all-powerful being that creates gods. Once that god has been selected, the god then has to choose two others, one to become their consort or lord, and the other to become their shadow to do their bidding. Marika was selected as the god, then she chose Godfrey as her Elden Lord, and then Malekith was chosen as the shadow. Breaking all HR protocols, Marika the new god and her lord Godfrey end up getting it on and having 3 kids who would be demigods. You got the twins Morgott and Mohg, and also Godwyn the Golden. The twins were cursed as omens, so were sent underground below the capital, and Godwyn doesn't really do anything notable until later in the story. So the Elden Beast is now the Elden Ring, which Marika uses to power up the Erd Tree, which, if you remember, the Erd Tree was created by the grace of the Outer God. Once Marika gets the Erd Tree online, all hell breaks loose and everybody is so mad. But Marika is cool with it, because she sends Godfrey to create the Golden Order and lead an all-out war against anyone that opposes the Erd Tree. One of the factions Godfrey had to take down for his new lover was the faction of the Fire Giants. The reason these guys were so dangerous was because they had something called the Flame of Ruin, which is essentially something so hot that it can burn the Erd Tree down. But Marika loves that tree, so Godfrey killed all the Fire Giants, and just to be sure, Marika then killed their god. Luckily, the Flame of Ruin is an endless fire that can't be extinguished. It just sits dormant at the bottom of that giant cereal bowl. And even luckier, one fire giant survived the brutal attack by Godfrey. I'm not fully sure how he managed to hide, because he's literally giant, but who knows, maybe he laid in a giant bush until it was safe. But yeah, he survived and now spends all of his time protecting the Flame of Ruin. Okay, so Marika has successfully rinsed the Fire Giants using the Golden Order, and now she has some downtime to crack on with her hobbies. One of those hobbies was figuring out a way to eradicate Destined Death. In short, Destined Death is a power from one of the 7 great runes that together make up the Elden Ring, and this power allows the wielder to completely kill a god. So Marika decides to give the Elden Ring a tune-up and takes the Death rune out completely. This technically removes death from the lands between. After she takes the rune, she gives it to her loyal shadow Malekith to protect it. Another threat now stood against Marika and the Golden Order, and this was the Carrion Royals and the Academy of Rhea Lucaria. These guys were essentially magic astrologers, and their leader was Rennala. This war went on for some time and neither side won it. Eventually, the champion of the Golden Order, Radagon, married Rennala, and things were all good. Rennala and Radagon get it on and have 3 kids, Rykard, Radahn, and Ranni the Witch. Like in all long-term relationships, things needed a bit of spicing up, and Marika started to wonder if this big bearded boy was really doing it for her anymore. She started to lean more into her work and got obsessed with the idea of the Greater Will, who is the outer god we mentioned earlier, so Marika became pretty preoccupied with the Golden Order. Godfrey, on the other hand, had destroyed all enemies of the Golden Order and was essentially now in his retirement. He started to wind down, which caused him to literally lose his fighting spirit, which was powered by grace, which, if you remember, the grace of the outer god was what created the Erd Tree, so the golden fighting spirit fully leaves Godfrey. Godfrey is now just an old man with no purpose who has now been rejected by the Erd Tree, so Marika did what any of us would do and stripped her man of his title of Elden Lord and exiled him from the lands between. Godfrey and many of his Golden Order followers were exiled and lost the favor of the Erd Tree, draining them of any life force it created. This made them the first Tarnished. So Marika kicked her man not only out of the house, but off-world, which meant she was single and ready to mingle. But it didn't take her long before she decided her new man was going to be none other than Radagon. Radagon was of course down to get it on with a god, but he was going to have to break the news to his wife Renala. After Radagon was offered the title of Elden Lord, his kids Rani, Rykard and Radahn were set to become demigods. Wasting no time at all, Marika and Radagon have 2 kids, Miquella and Malenia. Malenia was born ill with the scarlet rot sickness, whilst Miquella was cursed to have the form of a child forever. Pretty weird. Okay, so this is where things get even weirder. It turns out that Marika and Radagon were one person all along. Who knows what that's actually supposed to mean? Maybe Marika ate Radagon, or maybe it's a split personality type deal. But either way, the reason this is important is because Miquella and Malenia were created by a whole god instead of 50% god and 50% Radagon. This means that they are also gods who are technically successors to Marika and will eventually run the whole thing. With her man running off with a god, but also being that god all along, Renala was pissed. She fell into a deep pit of despair and stopped running things for a bit, and this created a civil war amongst the magic boys. The Carian royals, who were essentially in charge of Raya Lucaria, were now at war with their people. Meanwhile, for some reason, Renala's daughter Rani the Witch decides to sneak over to Malekith's place and steal a fragment of the Death Rune from him. She then gave it to the Black Knife assassins from the Eternal City, and they used it to imbue their daggers with the Destined Death and then go rinse a bunch of demigods. The first being Marika and Godfrey's son, Godwyn the Golden. Marika went nuts when she found out her firstborn was killed. Meanwhile, Miquella leaves the Golden Order and sets out to create a gold needle to essentially delay the Scarlet Rot illness to try and save his sister Malenia. And then in turn, she also turns her back on the Golden Order. Then some point after leaving, Miquella gets taken by Mohg deep underground, where Mohg works to raise Miquella to full godhood. This is because he wants to become Miquella's Elden Lord / consort. Then he wants to create a new dynasty and take the role of a monarch. Now, Marika is really pissed. She decided to shatter the Elden Ring while simultaneously Radagon, who remember is also Marika, tries to fix it and remove her as the vessel. But Radagon fails. The Greater Will, who was the outer god from before, decides he didn't like that Marika shattered the Elden Ring, so imprisons her by crucifying her on a rune arc. I've seen a lot of people say that the Elden Beast was used to crucify Marika because of that attack he does where he holds you in the air and does the same thing to you. And yeah, I think that would be cool, but I don't know if that's true. Oh, and then the Greater Will also imprisons Radagon and the Elden Beast in the Erd Tree. All of Marika's children would now fight over the shards of the broken Elden Ring, each shard being a great rune that possesses a power. So for a long time, there was just a bunch of demigods slapping each other about, like 100 times the size of any war you saw on Lord of the Rings. A few of the demigods claimed great runes, but because of the ongoing war, none of them had properly risen to power. Miquella and Malenia couldn't replace Marika, and none of the demigods could become the new Elden Lord. Basically, everything was stuck in place because of this massive war. Because the shattering was crazy and showed no signs of stopping, the Greater Will popped down and once again gave the Tarnished the grace of gold, and then asked them to return to the lands between. Now that they had the Erd Tree's favour once again, they were tasked with mending the Elden Ring and becoming the new Elden Lord. Easy stuff. Years after the Greater Will blessed the Tarnished with its grace again, countless Tarnished have tried to complete the tasks set out for them. But of course, killing a demigod who has access to unlimited power in the form of a rune that you are literally trying to steal from them isn't really an easy feat. Eventually, you, a small Tarnished, are revived by grace at the Chapel of Anticipation. You take your first steps into Limgrave, you meet Melina, and she offers to be your maiden. A maiden's job is to turn rune fragments into strength, and you'll need as much of that as you can get for what's to come. Melina eventually takes you to the Round Table Hold, where you meet other Tarnished champions on the same path as you. One of the members is Gideon. He tells you that if you want to join the gang, you'll need to prove yourself by nabbing a great rune from one of the demigods. So you slay your way through the demigods, collecting all of their great runes, ready to piece them together and mend the Elden Ring, ultimately proving you're a badass. You start with Margit the Fellowman, who is literally just Morgott, who cleverly changed a few letters in his name. He was just chilling, waiting for champions to approach the Erd Tree so he could, with the assistance of the Knight Cavalry, kill them and one day become the Elden Lord. After obliterating fake Morgott, you run into a very distant relative of the Golden Bloodline, Godric the Grafted. He's obsessed with grafting, which is the process of taking body parts from those he defeats and grafts them onto his body. It's supposed to make him more powerful, but it just makes him weird. He's hiding out at Stormvale Castle from Radagon when you arrive, and then you beat him to a pulp. You continue to do this to each demigod, but are stopped in your tracks after defeating Morgott, because the thorns around the entrance to the Erd Tree are impenetrable, and the only way would be to burn the Erd Tree altogether. Melina suggests you head to the mountaintops of the Fire Giants so you can use the forge that contains the Flame of Ruin. So you head out, you beat up the last Fire Giant, and then Melina offers herself as some sort of sacrifice to light the Erd Tree on fire. If only she knew that the way would still be blocked. It likely had something to do with the fact you don't have all the great runes just yet, but luckily, the burning of the Erd Tree causes you to get teleported to crumbling Farum Azula, a floating city in the sky. Eventually, you run into Malekith. You beat him up too, taking back the Death Rune. So combining this great rune with the others is enough to cause the Erd Tree to burn bright red and burn away the thorns blocking your path. Gideon the All-Knowing makes a return after seeing how far you've come and reveals himself to be against the whole Tarnished taking over as Elden Lord thing. And even though he's seen you batter actual gods, he decides it's wise to fight you anyway. He may be all-knowing, but he didn't see this coming. As you make your way to mend the Elden Ring, you're stopped once again, but this time by the first Elden Lord, Godfrey himself. Eventually, you slap him about and he reveals himself to be Chieftain of the Badlands, Hoarah, who is of course the first Tarnished. After defeating him, you finally head inside to see Marika crucified on a rune arc, only to become Radagon. Then after being beaten badly, Marika reveals her final form, the Elden Beast. And you beat that too. And now it's finally time to do what you came here for and repair the Elden Ring and become the next Elden Lord. What the Lord doesn't explain is sometimes the Tarnished cheese his way through every demigod, exploiting his way to victory. And if you click this video, you'll see how you can do that too. Thanks for watching.